This happened to me back in 2012. I would like to share with you about this experience I had when I was riding the city bus late at night when I used to work at the Minnesota Math and Science Academy as an assistant. I would usually get off of work at around 6 p.m., then walk over to my friend's place at an address near Jackson Street. Now here's the interesting thing. His house was literally across the street from a cemetery known as Oakland Cemetery. His living room window would be facing the cemetery, gave me creeps late at night, and when I had to walk to the bus stop that was on Jackson Street in Cayuga around 11:13 p.m., I would still get the cold shivers. Luckily, nothing has ever happened to me for a while till a couple of weeks later. When I fell asleep at my friend's house and forgot to set the alarm for myself 10 minutes before 11:13 p.m., my friend woke me up at about 11:43 p.m. I noticed that I had missed my bus stop. The next bus stop didn't come until about 12:13 a.m. I quickly packed my personal belongings and ran to the bus stop with as much speed as I could. Thankfully, I made it 5 minutes early. As the bus approached and opened its door, I immediately walked up the 3 steps and keyed my bus pass as well as greeted the bus driver. I then walked all the way to the back of the bus where I sat down and eventually placed earbuds in my ear. I took a good glance all around the bus and didn't see anyone else other than the bus driver and I. Before the bus driver could close the door, we both heard a shout from across the sidewalk where the cemetery was on. We both saw what looked to be a Hmong girl waving her hand from a distance and shouting something. I assumed she was trying to get on the bus. Luckily, the bus driver stopped and reopened the doors. The Hmong girl entered. I looked at the Hmong girl and noticed instantly that she had an older set of traditional Hmong clothes that looked like it was a set from Sinquan. However, she was not wearing a turban or hat on her head. I'm guessing she was Hmong De. I carefully observed the designs on her clothes and noticed a white pleated skirt. Her jacket was black and had yellow flower designs on it. She also had a sao on as well. She looked like she was between the ages of 18 and 24. Upon her entering, I noticed she took out something from the inside of her black jacket. It looked like it was cash. She stuffed it into the machine and eventually came to sit in the seat of the middle row. The bus driver closed the doors, and we then headed the next couple of stops at Jackson Street and Rose Avenue. The Hmong girl shouted in Hmong at the bus driver for him to stop. However, because he wasn't Hmong, he didn't know what she was saying, so he kept driving until I shouted towards the front and told him to stop in English. He understood and stopped the bus, and turned around and shouted towards me, "Is this your bus stop, sir?" He said it in an accent and I couldn't hear him clearly, so I decided to walk up to the front of the bus and talk to him there. I passed the Hmong girl, whom I eventually took a closer glance towards her face. I was unable to see her whole face due to her bangs covering the majority of her face, but I still continued to talk to the bus driver at the front of the bus. I told him that it wasn't my bus stop, and that it was for the lady sitting in front of me. We both turned our heads towards the back of the bus and noticed that she wasn't sitting at her designated seat no more. We then looked at each other with shock in our eyes. At that moment, the bus driver told me to sit down quickly so we could continue to reach my bus stop. I quickly sat down and did not utter a single word. Do know that during this time, the bus that I was in did not have a secondary door to exit, so there was really no way she could have left unless she was a ghost. The bus driver quickly closed the door and stepped hard on the gas pedal. He kept driving and driving till I eventually told him to stop at my designated bus stop. Before I could leave, he asked me if I could wait a bit while he counted his change from the machine dispenser. He told me that I was his last person for the night, so he thought it'd be easier if I kept him company for a while as he counted his change because he felt uncomfortable. As he opened up the lock on the dispenser, we both noticed a large yellowish and gold-colored sort of paper. I asked him if I could take a quick look at it. He nodded and handed it to me. I took a closer look at the paper and noticed that it was joss paper. Joss paper is known as spirit money, to which family members or relatives would burn for the dead, so the dead could live a happy and fortunate life in the afterlife world. I froze for a good minute and quickly handed it back to the bus driver. I told him that the paper he was holding was not cash, it was money for the dead. He dropped it right away. He then quickly thanked me for staying late with him and informed me that I was good to go. I thanked him and quickly left the bus. I stood on the side of the sidewalk and watched the bus driver speed off at a distance. I turned around and walked the opposite direction. Upon me lifting my head, I saw a figure approaching me slowly. As I approached the figure, a cold wind suddenly flew past me, forcing me to rub my eyes so I could get rid of the dirt that went into it. As I opened my eyes again, the figure was no longer standing in front of me. I shook my head and continued walking. Approximately a couple minutes later, before it reached my house, I turned my head to the opposite side of the street and saw the figure again. This time, I knew instantly that it was the Hmong girl from earlier in the bus. And so I shouted towards her, "Hey, where did you go to earlier?" The Hmong girl turned towards my direction and lifted her face. She then gave me a quick stare with her tongue licking her lips all around, then disappeared. I stood there for a good minute, thinking about what the hell I just saw. Then I quickly ran as fast as I could back to my house. That following night, I couldn't get the image of what I just saw out of my head, until I finally fell asleep and dreamed about something interesting. I dreamt about a Hmong girl with beautiful and shiny Hmong clothes. I was holding her hand across a field of grains that were ready to be picked. She had the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. We went to the rivers to fill bamboo water containers and played in the water. Her warm fingers touched my cheeks and her head pressed against my chest. As we sat on rocks by the river, she said a few words to me. "Gang, when will we finally get to be together? If there ever comes a day where I'm no longer living, would you miss me and love me like you always have?" I immediately woke up that morning and I had sweat all over my neck. I looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was only 4:28 a.m. in the morning. I couldn't go back to sleep. Upon the next couple of days, I continued having all sorts of dreams related to that girl. I couldn't figure out who she was and why my name was Geng, because obviously my name wasn't Geng. I eventually got very sick and lost my appetite for food. My parents had sought assistance from a shaman. After explaining to the shaman about my dreams, he told me that he was going to go to his altar back at home to speak with the spirits. After 2 days, the shaman came back to our house. He said, "I have news for you. My spirits tell me that in your past life, your name was once Geng. However, your current name now is Genglong. The girl you saw in your dream was a girl you once loved by the name of Nut Yi. You both loved each other dearly until one day she passed away because of a rare disease. She claimed that she wanted to take you all to herself and will eventually persuade you to come back to her. Although you both didn't make a blood pledge, she apparently loved you too dearly to let you go on your own." I sat there at the table in shock, and I didn't really believe in shaman stuff, but this story the shaman guy told me was phenomenal, yet sad. I wish I could do something for her so her soul could rest in peace. I asked the shaman what I should do next, and he told me that we would have to do a ritual ceremony where they would have to change my name to something else and eventually have to call my spirit back or something like that. Ceremony took a while, but after the event, I never saw the girl in my dreams anymore after that. However, I couldn't get over the fact that she was the person that I once loved. Hey, looks like you made it to the end of the video. If you haven't already, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. It would really help the channel grow. Also, let me know what you thought of the video in the comments below. Anyways, I will see you all another time. Thank you very much for watching.